Hello, everyone, and happy Taco Tuesday. So, I know this is typically a weekly show. We come here once a week. Last week, I was out of town and was not going to be able to make this work. So, I do apologize for missing last week. And while I'm on like the subject of breaking bad news, I guess we could call it that. I won't be here next week either. So next week is our kids' spring break. We are going to be out of town. We're going to be in a location that's probably going to have really crappy Wi-Fi. So I'm planning to totally just detach from being online and showing up online. I'm still going to be showing up, right, in my content and the podcast. I'm doing a lot of batching, a lot of batching, but I will not be here next week, starting Saturday, actually. So Friday will be my official last day until the next Tuesday because my kids have Monday off. I don't ever remember getting this. So the kids will be off starting this Friday. Hang on. Like, I'm trying to think of all the things. They'll be off on Friday. No, sorry. They go to school Friday. Then they're off starting Saturday. And then it'll be through the next Monday. Y'all, I'm like I've got to get this situated because I have to put up my out of office. So I'll be here through Friday, the 11th. I'm looking at my calendar now. And then I won't be back until the 22nd, which feels pretty crazy. I will actually be back and I'll be doing things kind of behind the scenes, but I won't be doing our live stream next week because I'm going to be out of town and I do not want to battle with crappy Wi-Fi service and having to be like, "Oh, wait, we're connected. Oh, wait, no, we're not connected. It's messing up. Hang on, let me get back on." If you were here a few weeks ago whenever I accidentally shut off the stream because I was trying to be fancy pants. I was like, "Oh, I got my new iPad. I'm going to be really fancy and I'm going to show you a different camera angle and then I screwed everything up." Yeah. So I got too big for my britches. I got way too fancy. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to be on vacation next week with the family. So yeah, it's going to be fun. All right. Hi. So happy to see you. Happy that you're here. You're working for StreamYard now. Awesome. Awesome. StreamYard is such an amazing platform. And it has just really helped me get better at going live, feel more comfortable going live. And yeah, it's really awesome. Hang on. I can't see because I have this. Let me make the screen smaller. There we go. Oh, it's right there. Wait, no, always go backwards. That's my little StreamYard duck. My little StreamYard duck. Yeah. Super, super fun. So today we are, hang on, getting a little ahead of myself. Y'all, it's Taco Tuesday. It's Taco Tuesday. We have to say hello to Rita. This is our official mascot of Taco Tuesday. She is the best, the bomb, and she fits perfectly right on top of my face, which is why my friend Melanie was like, "Let me make something for you that's a little bit better." I mean, let's be honest, this one, it's pretty fancy, but I did not make this. Do not be confused. I did not make this. Again, talking about being fancy, I didn't make this. My friend Melanie did. So shout out, Mel. Thank you again so much. I love my Taco Tuesday GIFs. They make me so happy. They're a lot of fun. Hi, Tanya D in the house. So happy that you're here. Hi, Diane from Nashville. Y'all, this is so fun. I'm really excited. Like I have this energy that I think is coming out of winter, like going into spring, which is funny because y'all, I live in Houston, Texas. Let's be real. It's not like there's been snow on the ground or we've had blizzards or anything like that. But it's been cold here. Like it's 40 degrees today and it's raining. And I'm like, I thought we were done with this. I thought we were over the cold weather. It was like the high 70s, low 80s last week. And I was like, okay, we're starting to get into springtime. Like, put on my shorts and my flip flops and be comfortable. And it's cold again today. I'm over it. Like winter, go away. Mad at the groundhog. Like What were you doing looking at your shadow? Come on. But I have this energy. And this is another reason I've talked about whenever I plan content, I like to plan in quarters of the year because I think just like us and the rest of everybody else, we go through seasons as creators. So we will go through seasons that are super busy. Maybe that's the beginning of the year for you if you're into maybe fitness content or finances or helping people get their taxes together, like whatever, like that is crazy busy right at the beginning of the year. And then you have April through June. That's the second quarter of the year. Then you have this season of springtime and getting ready for summer. And maybe it's all about, things that you can do, travel. That's something else that's big in the springtime. Then you have summer. Maybe that's your busiest time, or maybe it's your slowest time. I actually take off doing interviews during the summertime. I still create a bunch of content, but I allow myself to batch a whole bunch of content in the first 2 quarters of the year. So in quarter three, basically, whenever I'm taking off and want to just be a little bit more present with my family and want to have options where I don't have to worry about other people's schedule, then I will take time off in that late quarter two, early quarter three when it's June, July, and August. So those are my like, hey, let's scale back a little bit. And then in December, quarter four, that's usually a pretty busy month. Y'all, I cannot talk this morning. It's a busy time right at the beginning. Like I feel like September, October, November is really like put your head down and grind through a lot of things and then take December not off completely, but it's a slower time for me. And so when I think about springtime having like this new energy and this freshness to it, like it gets me excited. I'm all about the seasons. I think that we have them for a reason. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Hey, Jerry, happy that you're here from Arkansas. Oh, y'all, I love whenever y'all tell me where you're watching from and what y'all are up to. This is so much fun. So, what I want to get into today, first and foremost, there is a brand new episode of the Profit Podcast out today. This is my weekly podcast where we talk about content creation and strategies and helpful tips. And there's a lot of how to. It is why this podcast is not in necessarily the business category, it is in the education how to, because I was looking through, I was in Buzzsprout. This is my hosting provider that I use. And I was looking at all the different titles, of my podcast episodes. I was like, man, like almost every podcast episode starts with the phrase how to. Today's episode is how to save time and money creating content. And so many of the episodes that we have is very strategic. And it's all about creating that content that gives you confidence. This is what we're all about. This is my goal. I want you to have confidence as you're creating your content, but also I want you to feel this empowerment of it's not overwhelming and it's not hard and I can do this and all the things, because a lot of you are saying the opposite. You're like, this is overwhelming. It's too hard. I don't have time, or I can't make this work. And I'm like, no, hang on. Time out. Like, let's make a plan to help you save time and save money. And so that's really where today's episode was rooted. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/episode 338. Excuse me. To check out today's podcast episode. Hi, so happy you're here from the Netherlands. Yeah, you want to start a podcast. Well, we're going to have some time in a little bit. If you have specific questions, put those in the chat and we will talk about starting a podcast if that's something. Yeah, I'm totally new, don't know where to start. All right, well, I encourage you to put questions in the chat if you have questions around picking your topic, picking your title, trying to figure out who your audience is. Put those in the chat because we're going to come back here in a little bit. I am going to, let me get this situated here. I'm actually going to share my screen right here. And this is when you go to crystalprofit.com/episode 338. Y'all, I feel like this yawn is like at the back of my throat. I'm like trying to hold it back. I'm like, go away. Why am I trying to yawn right now? What is happening? So I apologize. I'm like trying to drink to get it to go away, but I'm like, stop. What's happening? All right. So when you go here, what I try to do with my show notes is I make it something that's above and beyond what you typically will hear or see on the podcast, right? Because you listen to the podcast, ideally on your phone or in your car or wherever you listen to your podcast. But I want the show notes to be that above and beyond, where it has resources and other things that you can go back to that will help you really let the information sink in. So, saving time and money, creating content, we talked about there's a few things that we need to do first to simplify. And I mentioned 2 books in the episode, and these are very, very helpful for anybody that is having time issues. So, time management, time boundaries, or you're just like, I just don't have enough time to create the content that I want to create. These 2 books are so stinking helpful. These help me. I mean, I could give you probably 5 more book recommendations, but Boundaries was a really good one for me to have this set, I guess, goal that I didn't know I needed to have around my time boundaries. I needed this so much whenever I was first getting started. And then Christy Wright's book, Take Back Your Time, was something that I feel really integrates a lot of the different things that I've done. Like, I'm a mom of 3 kids, and so is she. And she had a great, really perspective on this book and how you look at your time and how to give things up, how to say no, and how to, just make some of those choices that you have to make when you're trying to be more constructive and be more intentional with your time. So, those are 2 book recommendations that I have. We talk about saving time. We talk about repurposing, batching. I actually have a whole playlist of these are actually, let me see. Yeah, there's 16 videos here. So it's a full playlist right here within the post. You could go to YouTube if you wanted to, but these are all about repurposing content. I actually have, here's a sneak peek. Spoiler alert. Hang on, I have to, now my nose is running. What is happening today, y'all? Oh, excuse me. So, I am creating an updated version of how I batch content in 2022 because my original video on batching content was created, I believe, in 2019. Maybe it was in 2020. Maybe it was in 2020 when I created that video, and it needed to be updated. It's still good. It's still a really good video, and I actually reference it, but I have a new batching video coming out tomorrow. So, here, you heard it here first. This is what you get whenever you join us live. You get to hear the behind the scenes and all the special things. But you can go watch all these different repurposing videos and get some more information. And then we talk about saving money with content. But I really wanted to point out this because I haven't talked about this too much. I have a tools page on my website. If you go to crystalprofit.com/tools, you can see it, or it's right up here in the menu. When you click on that, it will take you to all the different tools that I use and I recommend. So this is my editing software for how I do interviews. I talk about, I think Hindenburg's on there. A lot of them I'm an affiliate for, and some of them I'm not. And then there's the interview platforms, podcast hosting, transcriptions. I'm trying to think all the different APIs and tools that I use that are really, really helpful. Like my SEO tools. Like if you want to know how I do all that stuff, go to my tools page on my website and it will be very helpful for you to kind of see what I use in my business. I even have like my QuickBooks Self-Employed is on there, the Calendly, what I use for podcast interviews. So I have like a little blurb and a description for how I use these tools in my business. But people always ask me, well, what do you use for this? What do you? And I'm like, go to my tools page. It's all there. I have links to everything. You can go check it out. It is all there. And if you are someone that is in a space of having a lot of recommendations. You recommend tools a lot. I recommend having a tools page as well. It's something that I didn't have for a long time. And then I was like, I need something because people are always asking me, what do you recommend for this? What do you? And I'm like, well, now I have a place to send everybody. It's my tools page on my website. Okay. Just left the gym, looked for an audiogram, found. Okay. Just when I found you out looking for a good audiogram, and boom, you're on live. Yes. So happy that you're here. Hope you had a great workout at the gym. Happy you're here, Lamar. Yeah, we are talking about today's podcast episode, and we were just wrapping that up. But the next thing that I wanted to talk about was actually, let me go back over here. Oh, I wanted to talk about promoting your guest appearances on other podcasts. So I'm going to turn this off. Let me know what questions you have. I'm going to put this up because we need whatever questions you have. That's all I really had to come here to say was I wanted to talk about today's podcast episode. But if you have specific questions on starting, put them in the comments because that's what really the rest of this chat is going to be about. But I did want to talk about how to promote your podcast guest appearances because this is something super, super important that I don't think we are doing really well as guests. Now, what do I mean by this? So this week, actually, as of me recording this, I was a guest on my good friend Heather Sager's show. She has the Heather Sager Show, and it was all about really helping people with their message. And I had taken her program and we talked about, what that was like. And it was kind of like a student spotlight. Like I was sharing my story on her podcast, but it got me thinking about this idea of, well, how can I show up as a better guest so I can attract the right kind of guests to my content? This is really where it all stems from is as podcast host, or maybe, you host a weekly live show and you're looking for guests, like wherever you're looking for guests in your content, I believe that you have to be the model that you are looking for. Because I have noticed over time that as I've raised the standards for how I want to show up as a guest on other people's platform, I've also raised my standards for the type of guest that I want to have in my content, on my podcast, as a guest on my YouTube channel. So I think that this is where we should start is what are the things that I would want someone to do if they were a guest on my podcast? And a lot of the times, sometimes it's little silly things that I'm like, oh my gosh, it'd be so great if someone took a screenshot of, listening to or screen recording of the actual episode and they shared it out on Instagram and they tagged me, or they put, a little blurb on, what it was all about. They put it in their Instagram stories, they tagged me, and then they reshared it and all these things. Or I put out a post that says, oh, it was so great to have this person on the podcast. I would go in and comment on it and say, this was so much fun. I can't wait. And then I would reshare that to my story. Or I could send an email to my list and say, hey, it was so fun chatting with Heather Sager on her podcast this week. Make sure you go listen to it. There's a lot of ways that you can really kind of cheer up the content that you're participating in as a partner, as a collaborator, as a guest. And I think that we're kind of missing the mark when we aren't doing a good job promoting other people's stuff. Because it's the worst, y'all. It is the worst whenever you have someone come into your content and they do a great job, right? They do the bare minimum, which is show up, speak in complete sentences, add value to your audience, and be on time. Let's be really honest. These are some of the bare minimum things that people should be doing if they are guesting in your content. But I'm looking for the 7 or 8 things that are above and beyond. And for me, that is those social posts where they're engaging with the content, or they're sending an email to their list and they're talking about it on multiple different platforms. If I post on LinkedIn, then they're like, oh my gosh, this was so much fun. And I put something on Instagram, they reshare it, and then they engage with my audience. These are all things that I would love to have. in a guest that comes onto my show. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to model the behavior that I want to see in someone else that's going to be a guest in my content. So I want you to think about this. Like when you're thinking about how can I attract the right type of guest for my content, you have to model it. You have to. You have to do that above and beyond. And maybe you're like, Crystal, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't have time for that. That sounds like a lot of work. Well, I believe that these should be the bare minimum requirements for you to be a guest in other people's content. It shouldn't be, oh, I want to be on this one podcast because they could get me in front of a new crowd and maybe they're going to share about it on their Instagram and they're going to talk about me and they're going to do all like it's me, 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 me. Super selfish, very ego-centered. And I don't love that idea. So what I would want you to, because people come to me, y'all. I've talked about podcast pitches and I have several podcast episodes with friends who are in the podcast pitching space. Like there's one that May Kay Sang and I did in particular where we talked about, like we went on some rants about podcast pitches gone wrong and how to not pitch people. But anybody that starts off with, I'm so amazing. And this is why you should have my amazing self in your content, it gets deleted or it goes unread or it just like I put it in the spam folder. Like there's a lot of different things that happen to those pitches, but I never want someone to have that reaction to me whenever I'm sending out a guest appearance pitch. So these are the things that I want you to think about. I've been talking a lot recently about pay attention to your own consumer behavior habits. Meaning, if you get an email from somebody and you're like, oh, that's slimy, I don't want to talk to that person, pay attention to that. And then realize, oh, if you're sending emails that way, they probably have that same reaction to whenever you do it. But also, if you have a guest that comes into your content and you're like, oh my gosh, like they shared it like 7 times and then they engaged in the comments with all of my audience and then they did this and they did that. Like I would love to have them back on the show. That's really what I'm going for. Whenever I've been a guest in someone's content, I'm like, man, I hope that they ask me back because it's a lot easier to be a recurring guest and get in front of this audience more than once and have them convert over to a listener of yours, a raving fan of yours, join your Facebook group, get on your email list, whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so I think it's important that we think about how can I show up in a way that's going to impact this audience, add so much value that the host is saying, I cannot wait to have you back on the show. This was incredible. Like, let's collaborate in the future. And I can't wait for you to have that experience where you have someone that's so amazing come on to your content to where you're telling them, I cannot wait to have you back on the show. And you just get really excited about a collaboration or a partnership. And who knows what other kind of opportunities could be available for you in the future whenever you stay open to those possibilities. So, mic drop, like that's my rant on showing up at other people's content. I want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence as guests and we are paying attention to the type of guests that we want to have in our content and we're modeling those behaviors. All right. I'll shut up about it now. But I felt like it needed to be said. It needed to be said. Okay, so Diane has a great question. Since I'm a podcast manager, how would I promote that? So, all right, let's think about this. Are you talking about, Diane, being in someone else's content, like how you could promote that, being a guest on someone else's podcast? Because there's a lot of different ways. I believe if you haven't, and it's funny because I see you doing this in your profile picture and now I'm doing it on my face. I don't know if that was like, have I done that this whole time? Was this like a subconscious thing? Now I'm touching my face because I see you going this. I like it. Anyway, but I think that it should be something that you're bringing up multiple times in an interview, in a, when I'm on a podcast as a speaker. Okay. This is a really good question. I want you to get comfortable saying the words clients, members of my community, people I've worked with previously, other podcasts I've worked with, I've collaborated with, partners that I have in this space. Like, start saying some of these words. Maybe you just need to sit down and brainstorm different ways you would talk about your client, because it is a little off putting when somebody's like, oh, I'm a podcast manager. Let me come on your show and share what I know. It's not really compelling me to say, oh, I would love to have you on my podcast. It would need to be something a little bit above and beyond that. And even better, if you can work in, my previous clients have told me X, Y, and Z. A testimonial, y'all, listen, if you're doing something else, you got to listen to this. A testimonial, social proof, or someone else saying that you are amazing at what you do will go so much farther than you talking about how amazing you are. This is marketing 101. That this is why people have ratings, reviews, testimonials. It's why you see people take screenshots on Facebook and Instagram and all these places whenever they get like a shout out. I'm not kidding, I use Google Drive. I have an entire Google Drive folder filled with screenshots and testimonials and people that have said good things about my content. So if you're looking at ways, and I'm thinking about this as pitching first, and then we'll get into how to talk about it. But when you're pitching someone, you could absolutely include that in your pitch. You're like, yeah, I'm a podcast manager. Here's what so and so had to say about when they've worked with me in the past. And now I feel like I'm getting a little off tangent talking about marketing, specifically like your business and what you do. But when it comes to talking about being a podcast manager as a speaker, a guest on a podcast, I mean, I feel like that needs to be part of your pitch. I mean, I'm assuming that's why you're trying to get on other podcasts to grow your business, get in front of other clients. And so by doing that, I would imagine the thing that you're going to talk about on your podcast would be interrelated to being a podcast manager. So I'm going to give you a few examples. So if I were to have a podcast manager on my show, they would need to talk about ways that they can save podcasters time, money, energy, be able to spend more time with their family, or have, anything else that's related to the value, because that's all valuable to my audience, without their services. So this is very, very key. I don't like the idea of people going on to podcast, getting interviewed, being a guest on a show, and all they do is like, oh, let me tell you the two things, but really, if you want to have the other five, you got to come, I think that's crap. Y'all, let's just call BS on the people that are trying to give content, valuable teachings on a podcast, but they only give you like two or three things. And then they're like, but you have to join my program if you want the rest of it, or you have to go download my freebie, or you have to do that. I'm all about teasing content, but you're picking the wrong thing if you can't deliver a full, complete thought in a podcast episode. Does this make sense? Is everybody like here with me? What I'm saying is you should have, like, if your talk, the thing that you're going to be talking about on a podcast episode can't stand on its own. If you're like, well, there's actually like, I teach these principles in my course, or, I say this in my own content. I don't know if I'm repeating myself, or I really don't want to give all of this away. Well, then you need to talk about something else. That's really what it all comes down to. And maybe it means you talk about the thing that's two or three steps before someone would ever hire you to be their podcast manager. So the thing that comes to mind for me is people that are probably overwhelmed or ready to quit, the ones that have no idea where to start or how to even think about creating a podcast. These are the types of people that would need to hire a podcast manager. So instead of saying, oh, well, I teach this, this, and this, or I help my clients with this, think about how you can bridge the gap for these people to where they would say, oh my gosh, I got to hire Diane. Like she's she's fantastic. She spoke so well on this podcast. I loved her energy. I love what she talked about. And she offered so much value. I bet her paid services are incredible. So let me know if that makes sense. Okay. And then Sarah, I think Sarah's comment was when we were talking about being a guest and promoting your guest appearances. Yeah, that was awesome. So you have a freebie on my website, but what's the best way to promote my podcast management business when I'm a guest speaker on other podcasts? So freebie, best way to promote my podcast. Okay, this would be, does your freebie relate to what you do in your business? That would be question number one. Number one, is your freebie directly correlated to your podcast management business? Because if it's not, you need a new freebie. You need something that's going to drive someone to where you could say, oh, I actually have a free resource on my website that people can go download. It's totally free and it will walk them through. And I'm thinking specifically of like a checklist. Like, here's what you need to do in order to be prepared to hand off your podcast services or whatever. So maybe it looks like them deciding, oh, this is a good one. Now we're in the thick of it now. What about if you created a freebie that is all about deciding where they are overwhelmed, what tasks they want to keep, and what they absolutely want to delegate? Like maybe it's something that they hate doing, and they may even realize that they need to hire more than just a podcast manager. Who knows? I actually saw a post in a podcast group that I'm in where somebody was saying, like, I need one person to do all of these things. And several people that do podcast management and social media management, they were like, for what you're saying right there, you need to hire 2 or 3 people, or you need to hire a full-time person that's going to do all of that, because like what you're asking isn't necessarily possible. So I like the idea of maybe having a checklist that's like, here's how to know if you're ready to hire someone, or how to know if you're ready to outsource your podcast management. There you go. That's a much better. There you go. Take that title. If you don't already have a title of one, you could say, how to know I'm ready to hire a podcast manager. And this is a checklist. Like maybe number one is, have you launched? If they haven't even launched, now okay, well, they actually need all the behind the scenes before their show is even out, because you'll have people that want to hire you from the get-go before they ever start anything. Then you'll have people that are like, I'm in the messy middle. I started a bunch of stuff, but now I'm overwhelmed. And I'm just like, oh, I'm ready to pull my hair out. Please, like, Diane, can I pass all of this over to you? So yeah, okay. So you have a checklist on your website right now. Perfect. So let me go back to your question. The best way to promote my podcast management business when I'm a guest, I would just get comfortable saying I have clients that I've worked with, and building in language into the way that you speak. And speaking of my friend Heather Sager, she talks a lot about this on her podcast and in her content, to where you're naturally, organically flowing in phrases into the conversation that give you that authority and establish that you do what you do. So if I were a podcast manager, I would say, yeah, I've worked with, and you could name drop if you want to. Like you could, if you are able to disclose someone's name, you wouldn't say their first name or their podcast or their whole name and their podcast, but you could say, yeah, I actually work with one of my clients, Diane. She had a problem with insert problem. And then you could tell a story about how you've worked with that client. You're not overly promoting your business and what you do. You're just talking about how someone had a problem in your community. You help them solve it. Therefore, this establishes you as an authority in the listener's eyes and gives them that, like, oh, Diane solves this problem. Maybe I'll have that problem. So I should pay attention to what she's doing. I hope that helps. Let me know. But this is also a conversation that you should have with the host of the show before you ever get on, and say, do you mind if I talk about my podcast management services at the end? Because what I will typically do when someone is a guest on my show, I would say, hey, at the very end of the conversation, I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell people where to find you. And if you've listened to my podcast, you'll hear like, hey, this was a great conversation. Can you tell everybody where they can find you? And it's in that moment that you have to decide where you're going to send people. If you're able to give a specific URL, some shows let you, some shows don't. Some people will let you give off 10 URLs, which I don't recommend doing that. I recommend if you have a free resource, you send them to that specific page. You say, go to dianefay.com/freebie or whatever it is. And then that's the only URL you share with them, because from there you get someone on your email list. Then you have your follow-up email sequences that you're going to send to them. And in those emails, you can say, check out the podcast, follow me on Instagram. Here's my free, webinar or my book or event, whatever it is that you have to offer that's also valuable. But yeah, that's a great question. Let me know if that helps or if that was just overwhelming and I gave you way too much information, which I tend to do that too. That's great. That's not a lot to do all. Sharing and resharing the content sounds like bare minimum to me. Yeah, I agree. But I hear so much of the time what people will complain to me about. They're like, Crystal, how can I get people to actually promote the content we created together? And actually, I'm over here, I'm looking at my content calendar from YouTube. It's why I created this YouTube video. I'm going to pull it up for anybody that wants to go see it because it was a really good one. But I talked about this idea of modeling the behavior that you want to see. So where is it? It is no. When is that? It's from January. When did this air? February 21st. Okay. This is the one I want to show you. Let me grab the name of it. Just bear with me for a second. I feel like I'm in a class. I'm like, talk amongst yourselves while we figure this out. No, y'all, don't do that. Don't get all crazy in here. Just stay with me for 1 second. Okay. Now, let me share right here. So this video, you can go up here to this little search icon on the YouTube channel, and you can type in content marketing or how to get guests to share your content. Go watch that video. Go watch that video. If you want to know more about showing up and modeling that behavior, but also getting people to share your content, making it more likely that it's actually going to happen, go watch this video because that's really where all these ideas came from and how I get this question all the time. People are frustrated. I get it. You spend so much time, so much energy. You're editing behind the scenes, you're creating graphics, you're doing transcriptions, you're doing all these things. And then you're like, they didn't even share it. They didn't even comment. I tagged them and everything. All they had to do was comment. That's all they had to do. I'm not asking the world of them. All they had to do was comment and say that, here, I was a guest on this show and it was a lot of fun. Like bare minimum, y'all. Bare minimum. Hello, Purple Paisley Planner. So happy to see you. Glad you're here. Let me see. Diane said, I'm usually coming on because I'm an older entrepreneur. So, Diane, is this something that you've already been doing? Have you been a guest on many podcast episodes and you're kind of like, I want to know more about, because it sounds like you've done this a few times, that you've been a podcast guest and you're trying to decide how to bring it up without feeling weird about it. I'm totally projecting on you. I don't know if this is really how you feel, but I'm asking, is that what you're feeling? Are you feeling like, oh, I can't really talk about this because I don't really have my I don't know. I feel weird about it because we didn't have this conversation before. And honestly, a lot of the questions that you have about a specific podcast host can be answered by listening to their previous guest interviews. Because I know I've been on podcasts where I'm like, oh, I heard them like they were totally promoting all of their stuff and all the different things that they do. So I'm going to ask as like a courtesy. I always ask. I'm like, hey, do you mind if I share about, which I typically now am just plugging my website or my podcast or my YouTube channel. So I'm not sending them to a free resource necessarily or a paid product. But I do think it's important that you get that language in where you're like, I work with clients, or I want to work with, this is another way to get that language in there. I want to work with people that feel overwhelmed with their content, or they feel like they need help with X, Y, and Z. And then that will really kind of plant the seed of who you would work with, so the right people would reach out to you. Great question. Smash that like. All right. Oh, wait, hang on. I have one of those things. See, Melanie's so much better at this. Oh, thank you. And I don't have any sound effects, but here we are. Thank you so much. Oh, you don't want me to sing. Oh, you do not want me to sing. Okay. So about 3 podcasts. So still need to land my first client. Keep at it. Just keep at it. Look for those pain points. Like I said, there's really 3 to 4 different types of people I can think of that are in that stage of ready to make that transition to hire out. And it's the people that are overwhelmed from the get-go. They haven't even gotten started. The ones that are in the messy middle, the people that are just like, oh my gosh, like, why am I doing all this? I just want to outsource some things. And then you have people that are like, I literally just want to show up and record. I don't want to do any of this stuff. So yeah, let us know how that goes. So Louisa says, I'm struggling to get started and record. What's your best advice? Louisa, great question. Happy that you're here. This is something that there's a lot of answers to this, because you're saying you're struggling to get started and record. There's a few different approaches you can take to this. One, I could assume that it is a confidence thing with your voice, or you don't like the sound of your voice. These are typically what will happen with when people come to me and say, I don't even know what to do. A lot of people know what to do. You know that all you need is to record your voice either on your phone, on a recording software, on your computer, or however you plan to record, whether it's on Zoom or another, interface where you can have an interview with someone. But what's really happening behind the scenes is that confidence of, I don't know what I'm talking about. Is what I'm saying stupid? I don't like the sound of my voice. I don't like going back and listening to it. Like, oh, do people like, is that really what I sound like? Oh my gosh. Like, I have all these, we've all had these thoughts. Everybody that's here right now has all had these thoughts. Even if you're not an active content creator, you have heard yourself on a voicemail before and you're like, oh, is that really what I sound like? So if it's any of those things, my advice to you is to record yourself and delete it. Record yourself and delete it as many times as you need to feel that confidence and build that muscle of just like, okay, I can do this. Because I promise you, you only do that about 10 times before you're like, I'm wasting my time. I'm just going to record it and it's going to be good enough. This is also what has happened to me. I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to record this video. It was terrible. Start over. Record it. It's terrible. Start over. And then finally, I just like kind of gave up and I was like, you know what? It's just going to have to be as good as it is, and I'm going to get better over time. So that's one approach to getting started and recording. My other approach is if you're having some technical questions when it comes to podcasting or just getting started with your content, period, you have to decide what type of platform you want to show up on. Is it going to be a podcast? Is it going to be a YouTube? Is it going to be a blog? Is it going to be, are you going to get started with just posting on social media consistently or sending out a regular email to your email list? Lots of different ways to get started. But my best advice is to pick one platform and one platform only for a while until you feel comfortable with it. Whether it's a podcast, whether it's, YouTube, it's social, it's whatever you decide on, getting consistent with posting and publishing will build up that content muscle where you feel more confident the next time you go to sit down. You're like, okay, podcasting isn't as scary. I've got it under my belt. I know I'm not going to like the sound of my voice, but Crystal told me that I just need to sit down and do it over and over again. Y'all, I will hear my voice. I was listening to my guest appearance today. I had listened to her podcast, or it was yesterday, but the podcast episode, I was like, I'm going to go listen to it. And this is another way that I could support other shows that I've been on. I listen to it on Good Pods, which is like Goodreads for podcast. Highly recommend you go check it out. But it's where I listen to all of my podcast. And so I was like, I'm going to listen to it on here because then all of my followers on that app will see it. It's another way I'm promoting my guest appearance. But I'm listening to it and I don't even hear that as my voice. Like, yes, it's my voice. It's me talking, but I have this like disassociation from me talking and sounding bad to where now it's like, oh, that's just me talking to my friend. That's just a casual conversation. Or if I'm on someone else's show that I don't know, it's like, oh, this is like just a great conversation with someone I was really happy to meet and talk about the things that I'm passionate about. Those are all the advice that I have for getting started. If you want to talk about, oh, look, I see a question about equipment. So we'll talk about that next. Hello, Sarah. So happy that you're here. I love this. This is I love your little emojis. Hi, Crystal. Can I ask what mic and camera model you're using? So my camera that I have right here is a Sony ZV-1. And I have it in streaming mode. Like it has a little USB streaming mode on it. And I have that connected to my computer. So that's what I'm using for my camera. Sony ZV-1. And then this, if y'all can see it. So I have, let me show you. You're not going to be able to hear me really well for a second, but so I have, and I don't think I'm zoomed in. Oh, no, I don't want to zoom in. Let's zoom out a little bit. Let me move this back. So I have a boom arm, a shock mount, and then my podcast mic. This is a Rode Procaster. This is a Rode shock mount for this specific microphone. And this is my Rode boom arm. So everything is Rode, RODE. Highly recommend it. This is not what I started with. I don't know if you can see it. No, you can't see it today. I have, let me see. Y'all don't get dizzy real fast. Okay, I'm going to turn you just a little bit. Do you see this? $20 microphone. This is what this is. It's fallen over and I need to fix it. This is my $20 microphone that I got started with. So you don't have to have anything super fancy to get started, but that is what I'm using today, my Rode Procaster, and I love it. I love it so much. The subject matter is usually about a new, older entrepreneur and how I got into it. Yeah, then if that is what you're talking about, Diane, then I feel like, you wouldn't be able to talk about being an entrepreneur without someone saying, oh, what do you do? Right? That kind of leaves the door open to say, I'm a podcast manager. And maybe you don't even have to throw your title in there. You could say, I help people. And obviously you would have some kind of something written up about your ideal client. It's like, I help people that are overwhelmed and they're ready to quit their podcasting journey. I go into their business or into their content and I see where they can make it easier. And I actually will end up taking on projects where I'm running the entire back end of their podcast or, their content, however you want to phrase that. So it sounds like you would really leave it open to, how you would talk about it based on just being an entrepreneur. It leaves the door open for people to say, oh, well, what do you do? You're an entrepreneur. What do you do? And that's when you would, and a lot of people, let's be really honest, y'all. When you're a guest on someone's podcast, one of the first questions most people ask, I'm included, I do this too, is tell us how you got started or tell us about the beginning of your journey. And that is where you've got to share the story of how you got into what you're doing today or why you decided to become a podcast manager. It's really crucial to how you're going to lay the foundation for people to understand what it is that you do and how you could help them. Good questions. Oh, Purple Paisley Planner. I have been, and that is the biggest tongue twister of them all. She always is so nice and courteous on any live stream. I see her on other live streams and she always says hello to everybody. And I think it's just the nicest thing. So thank you so much for I'm gonna pop, what is that? P cubed, because it's PPP. So P cubed, thank you so much for being here. Monique says, hello, y'all make sure you go check out Demo with Mo. This is Monique's podcast about dating. Okay, hang on. Dating, being engaged, marriage. What is the O? Always forget the O. The O is it's not obstacles. What is it? Hang on. Hang on. She's going to tell me and I'm trying to beat you to it. Go check out her podcast, Demo with Mo, DEMO with Mo. Go listen. Objectives. Oh, she beat me to it. She beat me to it. Y'all go listen to her podcast. Go check it out. What do you recommend posting on Instagram? I'm very comfortable with Facebook and just transitioned to adding Instagram because a lot of my community is there. Monique, great question. Since you're already posting on Facebook, what I would do is start posting similar things. You could do a direct copy and paste from Facebook to Instagram, but I can tell you the platforms are very different in how people engage with it. So what I have found works well for my audience, for example, is pictures of me. I don't know if you want to put pictures of you on there or not, but anytime I put a picture of me up there, it usually performs really well. And by me, I mean like me with my podcast equipment, or me in, a silly selfie, or just something that's not like a landscape picture or a stock photo. Like, I'm not a fan of stock photos on Instagram. Again, going back to consumer behaviors and habits, I don't like to see stock images on other people's stuff. I'm like, I want to see you. I want to see you because I'm here to engage with you and your content. So I would think about what are different ways that you can show up. I recommend following Jasmine Star. She is an Instagram expert that I love her personality. Oh my gosh. I met her a few years ago at a conference, and she is just as real in person as she is online. And she's just so fun. She has the best tips, the best recommendations, and she has really helpful tools for people that are just getting started on Instagram. Highly recommend. So go check out Jasmine Star. And but she's someone that I watch, and I just I see what she does, and then I get a little more confident experimenting. And sometimes I'll just put a picture up. Sometimes I do a soundbite. Sometimes I do a reel. It just depends on what I'm feeling and what I'm able to get done. But I recommend starting with what you're already posting on Facebook and trying it out on Instagram. Maybe you'll find some of the content works perfect. Maybe you can keep posting the exact same stuff in both places. But I have found that the more you cater a piece of content to the platform, the better it's going to perform. So, great question. Leah, so happy to see you, our friend from the UK. I hope that you're doing well. I love seeing your face. Being consistent is key. However, I took a break and it extended into months. Any advice about staying the course long term with podcasting? Yes. So I have, let me see. Let's go back here. Leah, I have a great video for you. So let's look at pod fade. This is so it's what is pod fade, how to avoid it. Go watch this video because it talks about why pod fade happens. Like, why does it happen in the first place? And like you said, it's something like, it's usually someone taking a break and then they don't know how to get back into it, or they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing to come back. And honestly, I look at, it's kind of like if you're on a fitness routine and you're working out, and then the holidays come. This happens to me every year, every single year. Either we're traveling or, we're just so busy with, the kids finishing up school. We have to go see this person and that person. And it's just like, and maybe I don't get to work out as much as I wanted to. So when January comes around, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in this, it's hard. It is hard to get back in to that same routine of eating healthy and working out and like making it part of my daily habits again. But it takes that initial commitment of saying, I want to do this long term. And honestly, I think it just comes down to being very, very honest with yourself too. Do you want to keep doing it long term? Is there a purpose that's bigger than I have to show up again and record this again and I don't know what to talk about? And I'll be really honest, there's a lot of people in our community that they end up changing things. Maybe it's the format of their show, like they will have an experience of pod fade, or they take a break, or they finish a season of their podcast and then they come back and it's a totally different show, and I invite that. I love it because what you've done is you've already created something and you've molded it into, okay, I think that this is what it's supposed to be. But then you find some frustrations or some snags in your workflow or your processes where you're just like, this stresses me out. I don't like this piece of it. Pay attention to that. So I would get really clear on what you loved about your show. Maybe we'll call the first part, the first season, what you did. You loved it so much, but there were pieces of it that you're like, but I didn't like this thing. And I didn't really love that thing. And this thing stressed me out, but this thing was a lot of fun. And write it down. Like, what are those things? Open a Google Doc, grab a pen and paper, and write down what you loved about it, what you didn't love about it, your frustrations, your pain points, because that will help you get clearer on what you want to do moving forward. So maybe you needed to take a break to realize, and I did this too, y'all. This is what happened. This is how I am doing the content that I have today is I got frustrated creating what I was creating in the beginning. I had the Rookie Life podcast, which I later rebranded to what I have today. You can go back and listen to all of my original episodes. I cringe when I think about sending people back to the beginning because they're pretty cringeworthy, a lot of them. But if I hadn't have created those episodes, I wouldn't have gotten better. I said that weird. I would not have gotten better and be at the level of creating content as I am today without those beginning episodes. So something to think about. If you want to get back into it and you're like, no, I want to do this long term, I recommend ripping off the Band-Aid and setting a date to when you're going to return to it. You don't have to just be like, okay, I'm going to return to it and start back again tomorrow. But I do recommend saying, okay, by April 1st, I'm going to start posting consistently again. Think of it like a new launch of your show, and that can help you get in that mind frame of I'm going to be consistent and I really want to do this. So great question. Yeah. Thank you, Crystal, for all you share. Always helpful. I'm so happy to see your face. This is awesome. You are so welcome. Yeah. Great question. Let me know if y'all have any other questions. Thank you for your encouragement. You are welcome. Let's see. Monique says I can do that. Awesome. Great question, Leah. Yes. I think, and again, Leah, you're not alone in this feeling of like, I took a step back and now it's been a long time and I don't really know how to get back into it. Yeah, exactly what we talked about, but I'm glad to see that other people are resonating with that as well. Great advice. Can you give the young lady's name I need to follow on Instagram again? Yes. Let me just go show you. It is Jasmine Star. Here we go. So she is right here. You can see, I think it's just at Jasmine Star. Yeah, Jasmine Star. She is adorable. Her and her family. She works with her husband. They have a little girl. They are precious, and all her stuff is so good, so fun. She is hilarious. And yeah, I mean, you can see all the different things that she's done. She does a lot of real fun stuff. Like it's very different. I don't see a lot of other people doing what she does, but you'll see the different things. Like, here's just something that's text. Here's a reel. Here's a video. Here's a carousel where she has multiple things. So she doesn't just do the same thing always. And it's not highly curated in the sense of like, oh, it has to all be the same colors or anything like that. I think that those days are gone of having it be so like uniform, and at least I don't do that. Maybe other people do. I don't do that, and she doesn't either, and that's why I follow her. Okay, that's me also. Awesome. Pod fade, what an apt term. Yes. Go watch that video, Leah, and then you'll have to tell us what you think. Great advice, reviewing the structure and content. I like the idea of a new launch. Yeah, and it's kind of like we were talking earlier, Leah, I don't know if you were here. We were talking about this transition from winter into spring. I think seasons are a great thing. I think that having this like, okay, I'm going to do this consistently and I'm going to figure this out. But then like right now, like specifically this week, I'm in a season of batching content. It's not a long season, but I will be going out of town this next week with our family. The kids have spring break. So I'm in a season of, okay, I have to create a whole bunch of content because I'm taking a break next week. And I'm going to be taking time off. And I want to spend very intentional time with my family. But in order to make that happen, I have to do X, Y, and Z. So I love thinking about things seasonally. And if it requires a new launch, then awesome. I'm glad you're excited about it. Okay. This is the last question we have for today. How do you learn how to edit your raw video for upload? This is funny because it's been a while. It's been a second. I use Camtasia. This is what I use for my editing software for my videos. And I've tried many different platforms. I tried Adobe Premiere for a while. I have tried Descript. I have tried many different things. But at the end of the day, I have found that the simpler the process, then the easier it is for me to show up and do it over and over again. Because I publish 3 YouTube videos a week and I love Camtasia's simplicity of the user interface. So that's the software I use. Now, your question was, how do you learn to edit your raw video for upload? For me, this process looked like watching a ton of content, like other people's stuff, and figuring out, well, what do I want to do? What's my style? What do I like to do? And it took a while. Again, just like with my podcast, you can go back to my original YouTube videos and realize she didn't know what she was doing. She didn't even know. These are terrible. So my very first YouTube videos were really, really bad. I'm talking about like into 2016, 2017. They're there. Go watch them. Just don't tell me about it. Don't comment. Don't do anything. Just don't tell me that y'all watch them, but you can go back and watch them. I don't want to know. I don't want to think about it. I didn't start with great equipment. I started with a laptop camera, whatever camera was built into my laptop I was using at the time. And I just said, you know what? I watched 2 or 3 different creators that I really liked the style of how their videos were edited. And I just went and watched my own YouTube videos. Well, how do I do this? And how do I make this transition work? So I like to get my hands dirty with the software, meaning I like to record the video file or the audio file and then get it into the software I'm going to use to manipulate it and then make mistakes. That's how I learn, is getting in there and breaking things, figuring things out, saving multiple versions. Cause I'm like, okay, well, if I totally screw this up, at least I have a backup and it's fine if I do something that I can't undo. So I just recommend getting in there and trying things out and getting started. I mean, that's the motto that we have around here, is keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. And we say that for a reason, because I continuously need that message over and over and over again. So I hope that helps, y'all. This was so, so fun. I love whenever we can do those lives. If you didn't hear us earlier, next Tuesday, we will not have our live session again, because I'm going to be out of town and I have no idea how the Wi-Fi is going to be. So I'm likely just going to be offline for several days, which is not a bad thing. I'm not even upset about it. I'm kind of excited about it. But we will not have our live stream. We will be back on, let me look at the calendar, on the 22nd. So 2 weeks from today, we will be back for our weekly live stream that happens at 10 a.m. Central. And I hope to see you there. So everybody have a fantastic, one more time, Taco Tuesday. Have a fantastic Taco Tuesday. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Bye, y'all.